Okay, here is the rewritten content, adjusted to meet your specifications. Welcome to Wisdom and Wealth, your guide to navigating life's complexities with clarity and purpose. Before we dive in, if you appreciate content that helps you grow wiser and build a more fulfilling life, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. We're building a community for those who want to thrive, especially those of us over 40, and your support helps us reach more people. Today, we're tackling a question many of us face. What do you do when you pour your heart into helping someone, giving them your best, and they just don't seem to understand or appreciate it? They don't grasp the value of your help, or the consequences of their own actions and habits. It's a frustrating situation, isn't it? This is one of the most frequent concerns I hear from people. They say, I want to help this person, I care about them deeply. I'm giving it my all, but they're just not ready to receive it. They're not growing, they're not changing. So what do you do? Should you keep helping, or should you step back? Before I go further, if you are finding some wisdom and insight into Buddhist teachings, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Wisdom and Wealth. Let me share a story from the life of the Buddha to illustrate this dilemma. The Buddha had a cousin named Devadatta. Initially, Devadatta joined the monastic order and seemed to be doing well. He practiced meditation and followed the Buddha's guidance. However, as the Buddha's fame grew and people began to flock to him, Devadatta became consumed by jealousy. He became power-hungry, and decided that he needed to become the next Buddha. He mistakenly thought Buddhahood was a position you could simply take, a title to be swapped like changing shifts at work. He didn't understand the true nature of enlightenment. Driven by his jealousy, Devadatta tried everything to undermine and harm the Buddha, even attempting to take his life. Yet, despite these actions, the Buddha maintained compassion in his heart for Devadatta. I came across a passage in the sutras where the Buddha speaks about Devadatta. It's quite powerful. The Buddha essentially said that Devadatta was someone he thought about day and night, someone he wanted to help with all his being. He was willing to give his best to this person, but Devadatta didn't understand the consequences of his ill intentions. The Buddha was ready to help, but Devadatta simply wasn't receptive. Halfway through our conversation, do you think you are getting some wisdom from Buddhist teachings? If so, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Wisdom and Wealth. And do you know when Devadatta finally learned his lesson? It was on his deathbed. In his final moments, he expressed regret for his actions towards the Buddha, declaring, "From now on, I take refuge in the Buddha." But sometimes, it's too late. This story teaches us a crucial lesson: some people need time to learn. It can take them a long time to truly understand the consequences of their actions and to be ready to accept help. Sometimes you're giving your best, and they still don't get it. That's simply the reality of human nature. People have different capacities, different mental frameworks for understanding the world. So, if you care about someone, if you love someone, you should absolutely give them your best to help them. But be prepared for the possibility that they might not understand it right away. In those situations, it's vital that you don't lose yourself. Don't sacrifice your own character, your own well-being, in the name of helping someone else. You have to protect yourself first. Only when you're strong and stable can you truly be effective in helping others. Don't abandon your ethics or compromise your values to assist someone. That's the first principle to remember. The second principle is understanding that some people need time to learn. Be patient. Practice compassion and empathy towards that person. The Buddha himself maintained empathy for Devadatta, even after all that had happened. If we can cultivate that kind of empathy, that's the best approach. Lastly, you need to be willing to offer your help whenever they're ready to receive it. Sometimes, we give our best effort, get discouraged, and give up. Then, after some time, the person learns their lesson and comes back seeking help. But we hold on to the past, our ego gets in the way, and we say, "No, I'm not helping you." If you truly care about their development, you need to be willing to offer your help at any time, regardless of their past behavior or current circumstances. Now that we are getting towards the end, if you want more of this content to help you to live a more fulfilling life, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Wisdom and Wealth. So, to summarize, we need patience, we need to allow people time to grow and learn, and we need to be willing to offer our help whenever they're ready to receive it. That's how we navigate these challenging situations. I hope this has given you some clarity. I wish you all health, happiness, and the ability to realize the 4 noble truths in this lifetime. Thanks for watching Wisdom and Wealth. Additional paragraphs following the same style. One question I often get is it easy being a monk? My answer is always no, it's not easy. Many believe becoming a monk magically erases all problems, placing you on a cloud of serenity. Trust me, that doesn't happen. A monk's life is as challenging as any other. No matter your station, there are always difficulties, problems, challenges, that's the nature of life. The Buddha himself said that's the first noble truth, dukkha, the inherent unsatisfactoriness of existence. So if you think becoming a monk will eliminate all your problems, you're mistaken. However, some problems you face as a layperson do disappear after becoming a monk. The lifestyle eliminates certain responsibilities. For example, as a layperson, you maintain a family. Monks don't. As a layperson, you have relationships, spouses, children. Monks don't. As a layperson, you attend parties and weddings. Monks don't. We live in monasteries, removed from those aspects of life. But that doesn't automatically make the monk's life easier. We have other duties and responsibilities. There are easier aspects, but only after you address those duties. Ultimately, becoming a monk focuses you on spirituality and your mind. A monk dedicates themselves fully to their own spiritual practice and the spiritual development of those around them. And working on that comes with its own difficulties. One of the biggest challenges is disciplining our minds. Becoming a monk physically is quick, but mastering your mind takes a lifetime. We're always on that path, striving to make our minds monastic. So, understand that becoming a monk is not easy, but it is beautiful. It's difficult because of the challenges inherent in any life, but it's beautiful because the lifestyle simplifies your life. We don't have many clothes, only 3 robes. We don't have many possessions, only our robes, our alms bowl, a few books, and utensils belonging to the monastery. When we leave almost everything behind. What remains are our robes, books, and alms bowl. The lifestyle simplifies everything. Monastic practices simplify life further. The precepts and codes we follow make life hassle-free and focused on spirituality. That simplicity is beautiful. I also love meeting new people and sharing the Buddha's teachings. Being a preaching monk gives me the opportunity to meet many people, listen to their ideas and problems, and share the Buddha's teachings to help them. It brings me great happiness to offer help and support. Another beautiful aspect is waking up each morning with something wholesome to do, something selfless. Cleaning the monastery and doing chores gives me the satisfaction of helping myself and others. These are aspects we enjoy as monks. Also, we enjoy listening to and learning the Buddha's teachings. We have time to learn, observe, analyze, and practice. These are the beautiful parts of monastic life. But don't think it's easy, hassle-free, or without problems. Like any life, we face challenges. But we work through them, practicing to strengthen our minds with the Buddha's teachings. I hope this has given you some insight into a monk's life. May you be happy, healthy, and peaceful. Another common question: can Buddhism be explained through science? Before answering, let's clarify the objectives of science and Buddhism. Science observes and explores the outer world. It examines planets, nature, technology, currents, atoms, quarks, dark matter, the material world. Buddhism explores the inner world, your mind, consciousness, perception, how they form and work. Buddhism also supports making your inner self better. So, science explores the outer world, while Buddhism explores the inner world. Can you explain and prove Buddhism through science? Not always. Trying to understand Buddhism through science is like explaining two opposites. Science observes the outer world, while Buddhism observes the inner world. Can you fully explain what's within you through science? No. Some things go beyond scientific explanation. Some spiritual practices disagree with science. We need to understand that they serve different purposes and be used in different contexts because we need both. Some say we don't need science, only spirituality, Buddhism, and meditation. But without science, how can we thrive? How can we make the world better? Look around you. See how science has improved things. I'm talking to you through a video enabled by science. We need science to thrive and make the world better. However, science alone can't make the world better. Science makes material things better, provides comfort and convenience, puts information at your fingertips, and explains the universe. But Buddhism and spirituality answer spiritual problems. They make your life and inner self kinder, more compassionate, and calmer. They help you build inner qualities and values. So, practice and understand them together, but don't mix them up. Can Buddhism be explained through science? Up to a point, but not fully. They move in different directions. Understand science as science. When you come to Buddhism, don't use a scientific perspective. Understand it as it is because it serves a different purpose. Practice them in balance, understanding their separate purposes. This makes it easier to develop both your outer and inner selves. To be happy is every living being's right in this world. Everything that we do, everything that we say, why we are doing them, we do that to be happy. Just ask from yourself, why am I doing what am I doing? You can answer to yourself. You will find that the reason why I do everything in life to make myself happy. If I ask from you, why do you wake up early in the morning and just prepare some food and go out to work? To make yourself happy and to make others happy, isn't it? Yes. You gain happiness by making others happy as well. That you have to remember, right? So there are two types of happinesses in this world. The first type of happiness is called the material happiness. Right? And also the other type of happiness is called the spiritual happiness. To call it a good life, to call it a perfect life, one must achieve these two types of happinesses in his life. One must experience both of these happinesses in their life. Right? So from this video I would like to share a wonderful teaching from the Buddha that explains about what are the types of happinesses that a person who is living in a household life, a family life, must achieve. Now according to Buddhism there are two types of lives. The first type of life is called the household life. That means the people who are living in a family life, right? Maintaining a family, living in a house, engaging in material pleasures and all the stuff, right? A household life. That means you, right? And also there is this other type of life. It is called the monk's life, right? Which we can call them the homelessness life. That means we leave our houses. We leave our families and become monks, right? So that we no longer own a house. We no longer own a family. We no longer maintain a family. Right? So the ones who renunciate the household life, the ones who leave the household life, they seek a higher kind of happiness. Right? That doesn't mean that they don't seek any kind of happiness. We as monks, why we become monks is to seek the spiritual happiness. Now when you become a monk it doesn't mean you totally deny seeking the material happiness, right? But for a monk there must be a limit for seeking the material happiness, because as living beings we can't totally deny seeking material pleasure. As living beings we must consume some sort of material pleasures in this world, but that seeking, that consumption of material pleasure must not disturb the peace and the spiritual happiness that a monk is seeking. Right? So for monks there are limitations for material happiness. Okay? But it is less of the material happiness and more of the spiritual happiness. So in this teaching of the Buddha focuses on household life. A household, a person who is living a family life to call that life a perfect life, a good life. The Buddha says that there are 4 types of happinesses that a householder must achieve in their life. Right? The first type of happiness, the Buddha called it sukha. What is it? Attisukha. Attisukha can be translated into English as the happiness of ownership. Now what do you mean by the happiness of ownership? Buddha explains the happiness of ownership as one must work hard, put his time and energy and strive and earn money righteously in the correct way. Right? He must earn money. He must earn wealth in the rightest way. Now what do you mean by in the rightest way is by you should earn money without harming anyone, without harming yourself, and without harming the other people, without harming the society. Right? If you earn money without harming anyone, that is the rightest way of earning money. Now Buddha said as a householder you must be happy and you must enjoy earning money. Right? Buddha was someone who did not say that you should not pursue happiness. You should not pursue material happiness. The Buddha said if you are a householder, you must do that. That is your duty, right? So the Buddha said strive hard, work hard, put your time and energy to what you're working on and earn money righteously. That is a happiness that you can gain. Right? When you have enough money to your life, then you can be happy about thinking that I own this wealth. This is my wealth. That is sort of a happiness that one can gain. Right? That is the first type of happiness that Buddha said a household must achieve in their life at some point in their life. Right? That is the first one. The second type of happiness that Buddha taught for householders to achieve is called Bhasukha. The Bhoga Sukha can be translated into English as the happiness of enjoyment. Now first you earn money, right? Now you spend money and enjoy it in the correct way. Right? You have to. The Buddha says that you have to spend money in a way that you should not harm yourself and you should not harm the other people as well in the writer's way. Right? So that when you enjoy, when you spend money doing good things like helping people, helping your parents, with your money, with the money that you righteously earned, and when you spend that money on the people who you love, right? To make them happy, it gives you a happiness, right? It is a great happiness that one can achieve, that you have to achieve in your life. Okay? Okay. So the second type of happiness that Buddha taught to achieve is called the Buddhahood. The happiness of enjoyment. The third type of happiness that Buddha taught us to enjoy in the life is called the happiness of freedom from debt. That we call Anukkha. Anunasukha is the happiness of freedom from debt. Now when you are free from debt, let's say you don't have any loans or any debt to pay, right? You are financially free. Then how much freedom that one can feel, right? You feel freedom, you feel a happiness that I no longer in debt to anything, right? I don't have any loans to pay, I don't have any debt to pay, so I'm financially free. That is a happiness that a householder must achieve in their life. Right? There is a great happiness that one must achieve, the freedom, financial freedom. All right? This is the third type of happiness. And then the fourth type of happiness, this is the most important thing. This is the most valuable happiness that a householder must achieve in their life. According to the Buddha, Buddha said the fourth type of happiness is called Anavajjukha. Anavajjasukha means the happiness from blameless life. Now what do you mean by a blameless life? The Buddha says that you have to do things, you have to say things, you have to live your life in a way that you do everything with a good heart, with a good mind, with a wholesome heart. Right? When you spend your life as a good-hearted person, as a good person, as a wholesome-hearted person, right, it gives you a bigger happiness, bigger enjoyment thinking about who you are. That is the most important thing, because all the other material happinesses, right, all the other 3 material happinesses, it can give you happiness, right? I don't say that it cannot give you happiness. But if you did not have this happiness, if your heart is complaining who you are, what you do, right? If your heart is regretting about who you are, then the other things doesn't matter, right? What matters the most is how you live in this life. Right? At the end of our life, the most important thing that we can be happy about is how we live this life. How much love we gave to other people, right? How much we helped to other people, how righteously and how correctly we lived our life. So the Buddha said you must achieve this happiness as well, right? So these are the 4 happinesses that a household one who is living in a family life, spending a family life must achieve. So I hope this video and this teaching from the Buddha gave you a little light to your life. I did this action. Is it a sin? And they say, like, if I did this action, if I do this, will it be a sin? So it turns out that sin is a big concern. People have a big concern about sin. So from today's video, we're going to be discussing about the perspective of sin according to Buddhism. Do and should Buddhists believe in sin? So first of all, before understanding do and should Buddhists believe in sin, we must understand what sin is. The word sin was originated from Old English word sin, which spelled as syn, and it also has the roots of this Old Nor word sind synd. Collectively, the word sin describes or defines the transgression of the divine law. That means going against divine law. Especially in Christianity and most of the monotheistic religions, sin is often understood as going against the divine commandments. Right? There is an all-powerful, almighty, an all-knowing deity in God. And this God makes these commandments and laws. And if someone goes against these, and if someone goes against these laws and break those laws, that person is called a sinner. And the people who commit sins, right, the people who do sins, they will be punished by the Almighty God, right? That is the common framework of sin according to the monotheistic religions. Now let's turn into the Buddhism. The perspective about sin according to Buddhism. Well, in Buddhism, the word sin is not used. There is no any place that Buddha used the word sin, because sin requires an all-powerful almighty deity. Alright? As there is no statement of all-powerful almighty deity, and there's no any involvement of deity's all-powerful deity in Buddhism. The morality according to Buddhism is governed by not by the sin but by the karma. Karma can be understood as the natural law of cause and effect. Right? It is something like gravity. Like if you throw something into air, because there is gravity, it will eventually fall down as a result of throwing that, as a result of the gravity. Alright. In the same way, the Buddha explains, if you do something with evil intentions and negative intentions like hatred, anger, delusion, and greed. These intentions, right? The actions that were led by these intentions will lead to negative consequences, because in the beginning the cause and the intention was negative. If the cause is negative, then the consequence is negative. And if some actions were led by positive intentions like compassion and kindness and empathy and wisdom, these actions will lead to positive consequences, right? So it's simply like this. If you plant a seed, right, you will get the fruits according to that seed. Let's say you plant a mango seed, you will get mangoes, right? You plant a grape seed, you will get grapes. In the same way, the Buddha says, if you do the things with evil intentions, right, hatred, anger, delusion, the suffering follows that person. And if someone does actions with positive intentions, kindness and compassion, wisdom, then the happiness will follow. So it is simply how the world works, how the universe works. Okay. So the karma is always, we need to understand karma is not just the action, karma is the intention behind our action. Okay. So according to the law of karma, when a person do certain kind of actions with certain kind of intentions, these kind of actions will lead to the consequences that eventually that person will experience. Right? And one of the major differences between sin and karma is that in sin it requires the forgiveness from a deity, forgiveness from the divine. Right? In karma, karma is something that you must work through yourself. And there is no any statement of any concept of being forgiven by a deity in karma. Right? Instead, you must take the responsibility of your own actions, and you must work through yourself and change your behavior. So that is how we understood the karma. So then you may ask, well, the word sin applies to Buddhism in the sense of this monotheistic religious meaning? It does not apply. So we need to understand the moral ethic. The morality according to Buddhism is governed by the actions, the intentional actions of each and every individual. Namadhyaya. Welcome everyone to another video. From today's video, I would like to share some thoughts about going for refuge to these three dwells or three refuges in Buddhism. Now, traditionally, all Buddhists go for refuge to these three gems or three dwells. And in other words, we call them three refuges, right? And it is a traditional way. And most of the time the traditional Buddhists they do it as a chanting rite. Whenever they do their prayers they say Hanji I go for refuge to the Buddha, I go for refuge to the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, I go for refuge to the Sangha, the monastic and the spiritual community. So one can think, okay, it is same like the other religions, you go for refuge, you believe in this Buddha and his teachings, and the monastic community it is same, but if you take a closer look at going for refuge, the process of going for refuge, there's a clear reason why we do this right. And also we have to remember that just because we chanted Buddhang Saran Shamo, just because we chanted that I go for refuge to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha doesn't mean that you truly go for refuge to the Buddha. Okay. So there's a way to do that. So let's discuss how we should do this. First of all, what are these three jewels? The first dwell or the first refuge in Buddhism is called Buddha. Buddha is the historical Buddha, the greatest teacher who taught the Buddha's teachings, the Buddhist teachings to all of us. The greatest teacher who taught the reality of life. So we consider him as the teacher, right, the guiding light of our life. So why we go for refuge to the Buddha? Sometimes some people can say, okay, now you're believing the Buddha as a god. No, it is not the same way, because Buddha wasn't a god and nor did the Buddha claimed himself to be a god. Right? So the Buddha was a simple human like all of us who achieved something beyond that an average human could achieve, the liberation. So why we go for refuge to the Buddha? It is because he's the biggest role model of our life, right? So to have an inspiration from a character we go for refuge to the Buddha. When we go through the difficult times and hard times in our life, we can always relate to the Buddha's life and say, okay, if Buddha faced such kind of adversities and difficulties, how would Buddha do this, right? So then you can follow the Buddha's life and Buddha's role model. You take the Buddha as the role model and it becomes the biggest inspiration for our life. So that is why we go for refuge to the Buddha. Right? So the correct way to go for refuge to the Buddha is to consider the Buddha as the biggest role model of our life and to learn from his character and to follow his character as well. Okay? Or even though we cannot follow his fullest character, at least we can try some of his amazing qualities in his life. Okay. So that is the first thing and the first reason why we go for refuge to the Buddha, right? And then the Dharma, that is the second jewel or the second refuge in Buddhism. Dharma is the Buddha's teachings. Now why we go for refuge to the Dharma? It is to consider it as the framework of our spiritual practice. Buddha taught his amazing teachings for 45 years and these teachings we consider as the Dharma. Right? So these teachings gives us amazing help to live our life and to understand the true meaning behind our life. Right? So to provide this framework, provide this path, we go for refuge to the Dharma. Now how to truly go for refuge to the Dharma is to practice it, right? Follow the Buddha's teachings and practice it, and that is the correct way to go for refuge to the Dharma. Okay. So first we take the role model and we follow his character, and also we follow his teachings, the Buddha's teachings. And third dwell or the third refuge is the monastic community, the spiritual community who have achieved the levels of spirituality. Okay. Why we go for refuge to the Sangha or this monastic community or the spiritual community is to give us the support for our spiritual practice, because we all know we can't do this all alone. We need a community. Everyone needs a community of people to grow. So when we get together and when we get in touch with this spiritual community, we can take advice from them. We can take the experiential advice from them and grow ourselves right. So as a help, as a support for our spiritual practice, we go for refuge to the monastic community. So this is why we go for refuge, and this is the real reason behind going for refuge to the triple gems. How do I become a Buddhist and how I convert to Buddhism? This is an FAQ that most of the Buddhist monks been asked by people they ask like how can I become an officially Buddhist how can I convert to Buddhism? Well, when you ask that question, it's very difficult to give an exact way of converting to Buddhism like ceremonial way because in other religions there is this process. There is a ceremonial way of converting to that religion like baptism, right? But it is in Buddhism and there is no process or there is no ceremony of baptism, right? But the process the way that is a process that is very closer to the conversion that you can say converting to Buddhism is going for refuge to the triple gems or going for refuge to the 3 refuse in Buddhism. Now we've discussed about the 3 refuse in Buddhism in another video. If you like to learn about what 3 jewels and 3 refuse in Buddhism are, you can check out that video as well. So the 3 jewels or 3 refuse in Buddhism is first one is the Buddha right or the historical Buddha himself, and the second jewel or second refuge in Buddhism is the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, and the third refuge is the SA or the monastic community. So if you follow the Buddhist path, one must take refuge in these 3 refuse, right? Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, Buddha and Buddha's teachings and the monastic community. Now why we go refuge to the Buddha? There's a reason behind it. We go for refuge to the Buddha considering him as our inspiration, right? We always look up to his life, way of life, right? And we adopt those valuable qualities to our life. We try to follow his life character. Right? Although we can't follow it for the perfection, we must try to do that. We must learn from his life. Right? So as the inspiration, as the role model of our spiritual path, spiritual practice, we go refuge to the Buddha. That is the purpose behind going refuge to the Buddha. And the second, the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings. Why we go for refuge to the Buddha's Dharma or Buddha's teachings is because it provides the framework for the spiritual practice, right? It provides this framework to us to follow the path, okay? So we must have the confidence to follow that. It doesn't mean that you have to blindly believe it, right? Blind you should have. It doesn't mean that you have to have the blind faith. You cannot not have any questions. Right? In Buddhism, there is no anything that is unquestionable, right? Everything can be questioned, right? You may have doubts, you can have doubts, right? Doubts are always seen as sign of improvements according to Buddhism, because Buddha says that if someone thinks, right, if someone thinks about the reality of life, he may have some questions, right? So that he goes on asking the questions, what is the meaning behind this life, right? What should I know? How should I say this life? So when he asks questions, then he gets the answers, okay? In that way he must seek something. So in Buddhism we follow the Buddha's teachings by asking questions and by self-exploration and putting it into practice, not just because merely we believe in it, okay? That is the purpose of going refuge to the Buddhist teachings. It provides us the spiritual framework. And why we go for refuge to the SA or the monastic community is because they provide us the spiritual support, the living spiritual support, right? So to get that spiritual support we need to have confidence on them. So what we do, we go for refuge to the SA, right? So these are the 3 refuse in Buddhism. Now how to go refuge to the Buddha and Dharma and SA, these 3 rituals and 3 refuse, that is this traditional way of doing it, that is by chanting it, that Budanga Chami Danga Chami Sanana Chami, we chant it for 3 times, and that is the traditional way of going for refuge. You can closely say that this is the way of converting to Buddhism. But here's the thing, just because you said it, just because you ched that bud hang chami, I go for refuge to the Buddha. I go for refuge to the Dharma. I go for refuge to the SA, the monastic community, doesn't mean you actually become a Buddhist, right? Because all these refuges follows and it provides a purpose. We need something to do in it. So what we need to do is we need to follow the path, follow the practice, follow the Buddha's advice, right? If you're following the Buddha's advice and if you're putting it into practice, okay? If you're practicing it within you, then you can call yourself as a Buddhist. But understand the term Buddhist did not exist in the Buddha's time, right? One of the closest words that we can find that is we can call to as a Buddhist is an ancient word is Buddha Sawaka, which gives the meaning of listeners of the Buddha or followers of the Buddha. Right? So to become a follower of the Buddha you can't just merely chant it and just it becomes okay. It doesn't happen like that. Okay. What you have to do if you are a follower, you must follow it. You must practice it. Right? And confidence in Buddhism or faith in Buddhism always seemed like a questionable way of understanding. Right? Explore it by yourself, see it for yourself, find it for yourself and then take it into yourself. Okay? So that is the way to become a Buddhist and the true Buddhist. Right? Just remember that just because you said that you are a Buddhist or just because you chanted these lines that I go for refuge to the Buddha doesn't mean that you truly become a Buddhist. What you have to do is put it into practice live in that practice. Okay. So I hope you got some idea about how to become a Buddhist. Have you seen those people who are walking on slack lines or cables? They do these amazing stunts on these cables. Now you may think that it is an easy task to do. No, it is the most difficult thing to be balanced on that cable. It is very easy to fall into either sides. Same goes with our life. It's the most difficult thing for us to be balanced, to balance our inner self and the outer self. Right? So from this video I would like to talk with you about an important place, an important area of us to be balanced. Right? This is the area of we helping others. I read this wonderful quote, that is the reason that I wanted to make this video. I read this wonderful quote in a place that says to not lose yourself in the name of helping others. Right? That is amazing. Right? For an example, let's say there is an empty jar or an empty vessel. Right? Can you fill other cups with this empty jar? No, you can't. If you need to fill other cups, then you need to fill the jar first. In the same way, the Buddha says that you need to fill yourself. You need to take care of yourself, right? You need to improve yourself in order to help others, right? But it is very easy for us to be in an extreme. Let's say if you're someone who is committing the fullest in yourself on the happiness of others, on the benefit of others, on the betterment of others, right? If you are a parent, if you are someone, if in your relationships, let's say you are committing your fullest self to maintain this relationship and to help others and to make others happy, right? This can be an extreme. This can go to an extreme where you lose your character. You lose your identity and you lose who you are in the name of helping that person right from the other person's perspective, which is a good thing to do. It's a great help for that person, but when you too much helping others without taking care of yourself, when you forget to take care of yourself, there are certain downsides that occurs in your life. One of them being the more you help without improving yourself, you reduce the quality of your health, right? You reduce the amount the productivity of help that you're going to give to that person, right? Now with the time when the quality reduces, that person is not getting what they got before, and they will complain, why you are not giving me, why you are not committing your fullest self for this. But in reality, you're doing it while losing who you are. Okay? So that is why the Buddha said it is really important to balance, that to be in balance when you help others. So the Buddha gave a wonderful simile or a metaphor to understand about this. Buddha said, be like a cow, a mother cow who has a baby calf. What do you mean by that? That means the Buddha said there are two jobs for a mother cow to do. One is that she should graze. She should first feed herself. Okay, she should eat grass and graze and feed herself. And also the other job is to take care of the baby calf. She should give milk to the baby calf, right? What if this what if this mother cow forget one job? Okay, one of these jobs. Let's say the mother wanted to only to graze and feed herself and not take care of the baby. What happened? The baby calf will die eventually. What if the mother only gave milk, only be focused on giving milk to the baby cow? Then the baby calf will survive, but mother will die eventually. Alright? So in the same way the Buddha said, for monks, as monks we live and we are committed to a spiritual life. Right? That is the sole purpose of entering a monkhood, to live a spiritual life, to be more focused on the spirituality. Now when you do that, it doesn't mean you don't help others, you don't help and you don't work on others' happiness, right? But when you do that, okay, one part of our monkshood is to help other people with Dharma, with Buddha's teachings, and helping with doing charity and doing helping them with emotionally, right? When you do that, there is this part, we forget our main idea, we forget our main goal, why we came into this manhood, and our jobs going the other way. Okay. Sometimes it's very easy for us to be engaged in charity, to help other people and be there for other people when they need. But when you do that, sometimes we forget to improve ourselves. So the Buddha said it is the monk's duty to maintain this balance in the spiritual life while doing all the works and the chores and the duties in the monastery. Right? While helping other monks and helping to the monastery, he must take care of his spiritual practice as well.